So Revelation chapter 21, let's talk about what's new. What's new? Do I have any, raise your hands, I'm sure we've all done it actually from time to time. Anybody here ever re-gift? I've re-gifted people, okay? Some re-gifting is okay, all right? Some re-gifting is a gift that, you received that, and maybe you realized it would bless somebody else, and so you weren't as into it as maybe the person that you were re-gifting it to is, and you go, you know what, this would bless that person, I'm going to re-gift that to them. Some re-gifting is a little ridiculous, right? And we've all, maybe even in our families, we all have people that re-gift to the ridiculous level, right? I remember that for me and my wife, when we were first married, you get married and you get lots of gifts, right? You get gifts and what's the other thing? Registry, thank you. Get gifts from your registry, you're excited. These are things that you picked out for your home. And I remember one gift, actually, in particular, because my wife remembers it, we've never forgotten it. One of the gifts that we received was a 20-year-old used juicer. Yes, it was like a 20-year-old used juicer. My wife's like, we didn't even put a juicer on our registry. What are we going to juice? Let alone it's 20 years old. I mean, I don't think it's safe to use anymore. And you look at the gift and you're like, man, this person wasn't thinking about me really at all, right? It would have just been better if they just said, hey, I didn't get you anything, but for the sake of saving face, perhaps, that's what they did. Now, again, listen, I don't want people to feel bad if you're that kind of regifter. Don't worry, you could still go to heaven at the end of tonight, or at the end of the service this morning. We'll tell you how. But the point is this. When it comes to the gift that awaits us in the heavens, it's no re-gift. It's not the Lord trying to save face. It's not the Lord going, you know what? I guess I owe them something for following me for this amount of time or giving their life, so I'll just slap something together for them real quick and here's heaven, hope you enjoy. No. The place that we're going to be talking about here this morning is a place unlike anything that we've ever experienced. There is no equivalent. And that's, I guess, the hard part about talking about heaven, because what do you really compare it to, right? It's like nothing that this planet or this universe or anything in existence really has to offer. There's no equivalent to it, right? And one of the main reasons why there's no equivalent to it is because there is none like our God who will dwell in the midst of his people anywhere in this world, right? God is going to be in heaven, and that alone is enough that should cause us to go, wow, this place is unlike anything on earth, and God is going to dwell there with me and with all of you as well. So let's take a look at that area this morning. Before we do, though, I want to share with you a verse from 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 3. It says this. Let me straighten out my notes for a second. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his abundant mercy, okay, this is according to the Lord's mercy, and it's abundant. Okay, I don't know if you think of yourself as a big sinner. I know I do. It's an abundant amount of mercy that the Lord has poured out on my life. According to his abundant mercy has begotten us again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Here's the part about heaven. To an inheritance. This is where we're going. This is what we're going to partake of. That is incorruptible and that is undefiled and that does not fade away, but is reserved in heaven for you who are kept by the power of God through faith for salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen, you love. Though now you do not see him, yet believing you rejoice with joy inexpressible, full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls. What does all this mean? Well, here's what it means in a nutshell. For us, guys, the reality or the culmination of our salvation is not yet fully understood by us, right? Heaven is not yet fully understood or grasped by us. There will come a day where we will be standing in the glory of the Lord. We will be standing in heaven. We will see all that he has to offer us, and it will finally dawn on us, man, that is what the Lord has gone to prepare. It is eternal. It is never fading. It's not going anywhere. This is what God, this is the culmination of our salvation, is heaven, is being in his presence. And why that's important for us to understand today is because, as Peter mentions, it has a direct impact on how we live today. You see, when our focus and our heart is set on the heavens, right? When our focus and heart is set upon the Lord, it changes how we act here on earth, right? We're not so troubled by various trials. Why? Because one day I'm going there, right? Who cares? You ever look forward to a vacation, right? How many of you guys care a lot about what goes on the week prior to the vacation? No, not many of us, right? Unless it's packing or preparing. But the reason being is because our focus is so set on the place that we're going, right? It's like, oh, I had a bad day at work. I don't care. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks afterwards. Work could burn, whatever it is. It's like, man, I'm just focused on where I'm going. And so, too, the Lord wants us to have that heart even here today. He wants us to be focused on where we're going and, more importantly, the company that we will be in. We'll be in his presence, in his company. The problem, though, for a lot of us is that we have in our minds, if we're being honest, this cartoon version of heaven, right? It's the clouds, it's the harps, it's the little baby angels fluttering about. It seems a little boring, if we're going to be honest, right? If it's just the cartoon version. But when we understand what the biblical version of heaven is like, it blows our mind. It leaves us, as Peter mentions, with a joy inexpressible. Like how excited can you be about heaven? There's no limit to the excitement that we should have over going to heaven and being in the presence of the Lord. Why? Because there's no limit to heaven or to the Lord, right? It's infinite. It's eternal. It's amazing. It can't be put into words. A cartoon won't do it justice. Pastor Ryan's sermon isn't going to do it justice. It's a place that we are headed to if we have a belief in Jesus Christ and if our faith is in Jesus Christ, that God says none of us deserve, and yet he's going to bless us with it for all of eternity. Not for a short period of time. Isn't it amazing when you think about just what one decision in having faith in Jesus Christ grants us? One decision in one moment in time will grant you an eternal reward. Usually, when we do something right, it yields us what? A temporary reward. But God says, hey, listen, when you give your life to Jesus Christ, you're going to be rewarded for that one decision in one moment in history for all of eternity. What a trade-in, right? What an incredible value that God says, that's what I want to give to you. So let's look at the text now. Starting off in verse 1 of chapter 21, it says, in Revelation, Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And if you're taking note, it's important to note this. He's not talking about the heavens eternal, okay? He's not talking about our heavenly home. He's talking about the heavens, the universe, the skies, the stars, right? God is going to recreate, if you will, or start afresh, start anew, a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth has passed away. Also, there was no more sea. Now, here's what's interesting. There are some that hold to this belief, this idea, that the earth that we live in now, okay, is going to somehow be tidied up, cleaned up a little bit, and then that's going to be heaven for all of eternity. No shot. That's not how this is going down. God's not going to tidy up the universe. We'll discover here in a little bit. He's doing away with the whole thing. All right? This thing is beyond broke. All right? It's time to trade that one in, and God says, I'm going to give you a new heaven and a new earth that you can dwell in, that you can enjoy. All right? It's kind of like this. Sometimes our view of what's new can be a little skewed. Sometimes we shortchange ourselves. All right? And what do I mean by that? Well, my son gave me the perfect example this past weekend. As Miss Alyssa was watching him, she put on, for all of my kids, this Christian dance music, right, in my house. And so she was watching the kids. She puts on some Christian dance music. And Levi looks at her and he goes, that's not real music. And she goes, what do you mean? He goes, I know real music. And so he tells Alexa, it's amazing that my kids know how to use Alexa better than me, but he says, Alexa, play Never Gonna Give You Up. My son You know, some people really hate being what's called rickrolled. You know what that is? It's when you get sent that song by, what is his name, Rick Astley? Yeah, Never Gonna Give You Up. My son loves that song. Legitimately loves that song. And I'm like, son, you're shortchanging yourself here because it's not, but he loves it. He knows the words. He's never gonna give you up. And Eden starts dancing. And then Eden goes, you know what? Put on the final countdown. My kids are stuck in the 80s. I don't know what happened. My wife says, it's your fault. You put it on. I put it on as a joke one time. They love that music now, right? In a couple more years, my kids are going to have the full hair, you know, like they're going back. What a shortchange, though. God says here, listen, we're not going back in time to a better time. See, I think sometimes when we think of how great eternity is going to be, we think going back to a day and age where things were better. It was never better. God's saying, listen, there's no day and age when it was better, okay? Sometimes people reminisce. You've heard some of our older brothers and sisters of Christ. You know, 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't like that. No, it was still full of sin. God's not going back 20, 30 years. He's not going back 100 years. He's not going back 1,000 years. He's going and he's saying, we're doing away with the whole thing and we're going to start brand new. Because ever since the beginning, when man first sinned, this place has been on a downward trend, a downward spiral. It has been infiltrated, corrupted, destroyed by sin. And God's saying, I'm going to do away with it. I'm going to make it fully new. If you're taking note, one of the beauties of heaven is that it is fully new. It's unlike anything else. And he says that those old things are going to pass away. They have to go. My wife, every once in a while, wants to do these things called the garage sale. All right? She has, you know, we actually do it together. I say, honey, it's time to clean out the house. Let's do a garage sale. But I usually put my wife in charge of picking out what's going to be sold because me and my kids have a real problem. We don't like to sell our stuff. We don't like to give it, even if it's something that we haven't used in years, right? Baby toys, clothes that I can't fit into for like the last 5 years. It doesn't matter. I see it and I go, but you know, honey, one day. She's like, no day. Not this day, not in this day and age. Maybe in heaven, Ryan, but you're not fitting into that anymore. Give up that dream, right? And so we'll go out there and she'll have it laid out neatly and we'll start walking over. The kids will start usually walking over first and they'll just start picking up toys and start playing. You haven't touched that toy in 10 years, son. What are you doing with that? You know, it's like Zion's little like push cart when he was a baby. You know? What are you doing with it? It's got to be done away with. In 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 11, it says, therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, everything around us will be dissolved. What manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. We're not looking for our hope here on this planet. We're not looking and putting our hope in the idea that somehow mankind's going to get it together. We're not looking and hoping for the next big medical breakthrough or advancement in science. All right? I've been listening. There's this whole study and branch of medicine. I think it's called gerontology or something like that. It has to do with aging, right? And the whole goal is to get mankind to live forever. Good luck. Good luck. Maybe you can extend it for years, but the reality is that even this universe can't exist forever. It will break down over time. It says, nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. Therefore, beloved, looking forward to these things, be diligent to be found in him in peace, without spot and blameless. Here's the point of all this, guys. God says he's going to create a new heavens and new earth. And that word for new is the Greek word kanai, and it means new in character, fresh. It's not a remake. You know, sometimes, you guys ever seen those movies that have been remade, you know? They were really good at one point. They're like, you know what? We've advanced a little bit. We're gonna redo this movie, right? And I just think it's because Hollywood honestly has gotten lazy over time. They can't come up with any new stories, so we're just gonna do a remake now, right? Sometimes the remakes are absolutely terrible, right? Despite all the new advancements in cinematography and special effects, sometimes they just get it all wrong. God's not saying he's going to remake anything. He's saying we're scrapping the old and starting afresh. We're starting brand new. Isaiah chapter 65, verse 17 and 19, it shares that same idea. It says, "For behold," this is the Lord saying, "I create new heavens and new earth, and the former shall not be remembered or come to mind. But be glad." See, in other words, this isn't something to get sad over. All right, this is something to rejoice in, because if you thought this is good now, you're going to be really impressed with what's to come. Think about it for a moment. Think about the most beautiful and scenic area on planet Earth. It's going to be way better in the age to come. "But be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem as a rejoicing, her people a joy. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people. The voice of weeping shall no longer be heard in her, nor the voice of crying." Here's something interesting to think about as I was reading through that area of Scripture. Do you realize there's not a place on planet Earth that people haven't probably shed a tear in? That means just because it's something that you might enjoy in that moment doesn't mean that it hasn't brought some bit of heartache or pain, or people haven't experienced pain there. God says, in the new age, in the new heavens, in the new earth, not anymore. There won't be pain there. There won't be heartache there. There won't be any death there. There won't be any sin there. There won't be anything to weep over there. And here's the point of all this. Because God has looked at what mankind has made now. And there's this great line. I know it's from the Bible as well, but I like the way they do it in this movie called The Knight's Tale. They remember that scene where they're looking over the guys he's laying down, and he says, "You've been weighed, you've been measured, you've been found wanting." I love that. Because God looks at this heaven or this earth, and he says, "You've been weighed, you've been measured, you've been found wanting. You're lacking something." And God's saying, I'm going to recreate it. I'm going to make it new. And the word for us here today is, don't fall in love with this place. It's not your home. In fact, God made it clear. He says, you're sojourners. You're just traveling through. Don't make this place your permanent residence. Don't make this place your permanent home. Don't let your heart become anchored to this place. Don't let this system infiltrate your heart. God even says in Luke chapter 21 and verse 33, he says, heavens and the earth will pass away. It's going somewhere. It's not sticking around. You know, it's like kids. We can be just like those. You remember when you were younger, you ever bring home animals to your family? I used to do that. Find a lizard, find a frog. I was the weird kid, okay? If I brought home a dog, I was allergic to cats, so there was no shot there. You know, you find a stray and you bring it home, and your parents are like, don't name it. You're not keeping it. It's not staying in this house. God's saying, listen, it's not coming with you. Remember, Jesus said, don't hold on to treasures here, right? He says, don't keep your treasures here on earth. Rust and moths are going to destroy it. He says, put your treasure in heaven. Put your treasure in the person of Jesus Christ. And here's something very interesting, too, before we move on to the next verse. So far, we've done one. What's with no sea? Right? Look at verse 1. It says, and there will be no more sea. You say, wait a second. Now, I'm no scientist, Pastor Ryan, but that seems a little unusual. I mean, don't we need the sea? Don't we need the ocean? Don't we need water? It'll be a brand new system. You see, the problem is that we only understand the system of life as it operates now. It's one system. The God of all creation, our all-powerful, almighty God, he says he's going to create a new system in which there will be no sea. And here's the other beautiful picture. There's no more division. Isn't it interesting? What does the sea do for us now? It creates divides. Different peoples and different people groups. And in heaven, it ain't like that anymore. There's no divisions. It's perfect unity. And it will survive and it will operate on a completely different set of ideas and systems. It will be perfect. And if you say, well, that doesn't make any sense, that's because you're still thinking in the old ways, with the old system. It's not going to continue that way. Listen, I don't know. I love being in this country. It's a great country to me. I know it's not perfect, but you know what? I'm pretty happy. All right? more blessed than I think we are in most other countries around the world. All right? But listen, it could get better. And God will make it better. You follow what I'm saying? It can get better, and God will make it better. It will be perfect. Let's continue on. Verse 2. Let's talk about this new home for a minute. It says, Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. God says He's going to give us a new home. First, He says He's going to make all things new. And then He says to us, and He reminds us here, that we will be given a new home. And I love how John responds to this. I, John, got to see this new heaven, this new Jerusalem coming down. Now again, I don't know if it's maybe because we've been conditioned to this type of idea, or we're just so used to this idea that we are saved by the grace of God, and we're thankful for it. But I don't know about you, but to me sometimes I realize that I'm not as in awe of it as I should be. You know, the fact that I get to come into church and Hector doesn't restrain me, knowing my history or my past, you know, I'm thankful for that, guys. I'm thankful that I'm going to get to see this new Jerusalem, and God's going to say, you get to come in. And I'm like, me, Ryan, I get to come into this place, into heaven, into your presence for all of eternity? I, Ryan? That's what I think John's doing here. John, I got to see this. Can you believe that I'm actually being allowed in to this place, into the presence of God, considering my past, considering who I've been? I get to enjoy this. It's an upgrade like we've never had before. I remember taking my wife on an anniversary trip of ours many years ago, and we're not wealthy people, you know. We work hard for our money, and I wanted to treat her to this anniversary trip. But I knew I was on a really tight budget, so I decided that I was going to book us a hotel. I went through Disney, and I went to one of the Disney resorts, but it was like one of their older Disney resorts. And you go, man, Ryan, you're kind of bougie. Older Disney resort, you're complaining. It was tough. It must have been a baseball convention going on. Sorry, you baseball fans, but the baseball teams were all running around through the whole facility, and it wasn't what I expected, you know, envisioned for anniversary trip, all right? So here's what I do. I call up Disney, and I'm like, man, you know, can we get our room moved, maybe a different section or a different wing? This is kind of not what I had envisioned. You know, it's our anniversary trip, and I don't have a lot of money to spend, so I had to, you know, book it at this rate. The person on the phone says, no problem, we're going to upgrade you right now. And I said, okay, fantastic, what are we going to do? They said, how does the Animal Kingdom Lodge? Now, that was one of their newer lodges at the time. It was like one of their more expensive ones. And they were like, how does the Animal Kingdom Lodge sound? And I was like, not good, because I looked at the price of that place, and I can't afford that. They said, no, we're upgrading you at no charge. Upgrade at no charge? I don't deserve that. I'm just a complainer and a grumbler here, you know? I knew what this place was like, and here I am. Isn't it amazing? Despite who we are, despite our complaining and our grumbling and our sin, God's going to present us with this new Jerusalem and go, here you go. You get to rule and reign with me. You get to be a part of this place. And you go, but I, Ryan, don't deserve this place at all. And he goes, I know. And we're going to get to why he's going to do this here in just a moment. But it is a holy city. You know, our cities right now, I wouldn't say they're really that holy. Maybe like pot holy, you know. Yeah, depending on what city, maybe there's like holes in the walls and things like that. But holy, I wouldn't say that at all. God's going to bring us to a new city that is holy. But God says this, it's interesting. It can't come from below. It has to come from above. In other words, we're not going to make it holy. There's a lot of effort right now to try to improve the situation, and I get it, and I don't think that we shouldn't strive to want to make the situation that we live in as good as possible for all people. I get that heart and desire, but we've got to know deep down inside, it will never be perfect, okay? I don't care what the guy promises. Come November 4th, nobody is getting into office that is ever going to be perfect at any time, at any point in history. There is always going to be a problem with even just the promises that are made. But with God, when he says that his holy city will come upon the earth, it will come down from heaven because mankind cannot achieve it on their own. His promise can be taken to the bank. His promise can be trusted in, and we can rest in it. James chapter 1, verse 17 says it this way: every good gift and perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, in whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. That means when God says, I'm going to provide something that is perfect, I'm going to provide something that is good, there is no variation, there's no shadow. There's no like, hey, listen, I promised you this, but now once I've got you here, I recently did some car shopping, guys, all right? And some of you guys know what it's like to do car shopping. You get them on the phone. Here's what I want. Here's the price that I want to pay. Here's the interest rate. No problem. Just come on down and we'll get you taken care of. You go on down and what happens? Variation and turning, right? Lots of shadow, lots of hidden fees, lots of things that you weren't promised or things that you were promised weren't going to be there are now there all of a sudden. Isn't it funny how that works? God says, listen, you don't have to worry about this deal being a deal that is not in your favor or that has some sort of variation to it. God's not changing the contract or the rules. He's saying, hey, listen, put your faith in Jesus Christ. This place will be your home. And every good and perfect thing, isn't that good news for us? That we don't have to look to mankind. We don't have to look to this world. We don't have to look to any system of government for help or hope. That it's only in the person of Jesus Christ. Only in the person. It comes down from heaven. And that's why we look to him on a continual basis. I love also this. It says here that God prepared this place for us. Think about this, guys, for a moment. Any of you guys, I know some of y'all are pretty crafty and pretty good at building stuff. I'm terrible at building stuff, okay? If I tell my wife that I'm going to build her something, I don't know if she's going to receive it as a gift. She might look at me and she's like, honey, I appreciate the heart. Like you used to tell the little kids, like, oh, it's so beautiful because I know you made it out of love. Doesn't mean that it's very sound, okay? But, nonetheless, God says, I'm going to prepare this place for you. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be absolutely perfect. Can you imagine a bride? He says, and I love the image that he gives us. It's like a bride adorning herself. You guys have been married or been at weddings. Do brides just throw things together last minute? Like, oh, the wedding's in 20 minutes. I guess I'm just going to start my makeup and just throw it on and just put, look in the closet. I guess this works, throw that on and, tie up your hair in a little ponytail or something like that. No! Brides want to be adorned. They want preparation. They want people to look on and go, that's a bride. God's saying, when I bring this New Jerusalem, when I present you with this heavenly home, he goes, it's going to be you looking on and going, that is amazing. He prepared that place for me. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 18 through 24, it says, for you have not come to the mountain that may be touched and that burned with fire, and to blackness and darkness and tempest and the sound of a trumpet and the voice of words, so that those who heard it begged that the word should not be spoken to them anymore, for they could not endure what was commanded. And if so much as a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned or shot with an arrow. And so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I'm exceedingly afraid and trembling. This was the first experience that mankind had in the presence of a holy God. You have to understand this, is when the Lord showed up on Mount Zion preparing the law, and the people were scared to death. They were scared to death. They're like, listen, we can't even let an animal touch this place. It's so holy. We'll have to kill it. God's saying that in this second coming, in this second preparation, watch this, but you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly in the church of the firstborn who are registered in heaven, to God the judge of all, to the spirits of just men made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaks better things than that of Abel. God's saying this new place, when it's prepared, people are going to look on and be blown away. Not just blown away, and here's what I love about this too. Not just blown away by the sights, but by who's there as well. You're going to look at me, and for the first time, maybe in our friendship, you're going to look on and be impressed. You're going to go, wow, look what God did with Ryan. I mean, that's impressive. You're going to look at yourself in a mirror and be like, look what God did with me. Look what God did with, you might not be as impressed with my wife because she's, next to perfect and stuff like that, but you guys get the point. I had to slip that one in, guys. You understand, all right? My wife, all right? Brownie points. You guys get it. I lost it. All right. That's what happens when you get sidetracked. God is preparing this place for us and preparing a people that will be in the presence of, and every element of it will leave us in awe. What will leave us in awe as well isn't just what he's doing with his people, but that he actually would do it with any of us. That he actually would bring us to this heavenly place. That he actually would transform us. Because, again, for me, I look on and I go, I don't deserve any of it. God's going to present me as part of this bride. And I'll be honest with you, I've been unfaithful. I've been unfaithful to the Lord a lot. And he's going to say, hey, this is your new home. You're part of my bride. This is the work that I want to do, and I want to include you in it. Let's look on to verse 3. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God. Everything is made fully new. We're provided with a new home. But I think this is probably one of the most exciting parts for me, is that we are given a new relationship with God. Guys, I can't tell you how many times in my walk with the Lord that I've cried out to God, wishing and just hoping that I would hear something from him, that I could see him face to face, that I could be in his presence. It's just like, and listen, I know that the Lord comforts us, and I know that he gives us his Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit dwells with us. But you guys know, if you've been through some deep pain and hurt before, you know that there have been times where you've cried out to the Lord and God, I need you here with me right now. And in some way and in some form, he does encourage us, and he does wrap his arms around us, and he is our great comforter. I'm not dismissing any of that. But man, what it's going to be like to be in the presence of God and him not be absolutely disgusted with me. That he'll look on me, and he'll talk to me, and he'll have a conversation with me, and he'll let me know things that I didn't know, that I thought I knew, to be taught by the Lord, to be in the presence of the Lord. We will have a restored and full relationship with God, and no one, except maybe Adam and Eve themselves, has ever experienced something even remotely similar. We will all have it together, and we won't be fighting for his attention. We won't have to sign up, I guess God's booked for the next millennium. I'm hoping I'm going to get in with him, in 2 millennium from now for 10 minutes. No, it says here, and I heard a loud voice from heaven. That loud voice is the Lord, and I love what he does here. He says, behold, meaning look. I want you to look. I want you to pay attention to what's going to happen here. The tabernacle of God, the meeting place of God, is now with men, and he will dwell with them. He will be with them. He will live with them, and they shall be his people. He won't be embarrassed of them. God himself, not a delegate, not a representative, not an advocate. No. God himself will be with them. You can write to certain celebrities and President of the United States and congressmen, and you send them a letter, and sometimes if they're really good, you get a letter back. But you know that wasn't them that wrote that, right? I mean, you got to know that wasn't them that wrote that. You got a delegate. You probably got, somebody in the office writing on their behalf. Sometimes you get like one of those scripted letters back, right? And then just a stamp that was put on there with their signature. It's like I get, even now, I'm nobody special. We'll get people writing to the company that I work for. They see a video and they're like, oh man, I want to meet with so-and-so. I want to get this person. And we've got pictures of people in our office, and they just sign it real quick, or somebody else, one of the secretaries, sign it, puts it in the mail and sends it out. We've got handwritten birthday letters. All right? And here's the point. God will not just will not just meet with us, he gives us an audience for all of eternity. You see, the culmination, guys, as I said before, the culmination of Christ's coming was to give us an audience with God for all of eternity. It's the reason. You see, fellowship was broken in the Garden of Eden. And God says, listen, I'm going to do whatever is necessary to restore that fellowship with mankind. He could have scrapped, watch this. He's going to create a new heavens and new earth, which means God could have even scrapped us. He says, I'm just starting new. Ryan, no way. I'm going to start with a new Ryan. I'm going to make a better Ryan. And he could have done it. But he says, no, I want fellowship with Ryan. I want fellowship with Hector. I want fellowship with Mark. I want fellowship with you. Individually, you. And I want it for all of eternity. He restores that. He says, behold, look at what I'm going to do. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I feel like I'm not worthy of that. I actually feel like that a lot. My daughter says to me the other day, she's sharing with us, she's got this little baby. She loves this little baby. She screams if the baby's not around. It's like a little plastic doll baby, okay? She's telling my wife that she has to put the baby in the crate. Mommy, I got to put the baby in the crate. Honey, we don't put babies in crates. Just want to clarify that in case you ever become a babysitter. You don't put the baby in the crate. No, got to go in the crate. What are you talking about, Eden? What is the crate? It's the crib, right? I got to put the baby in the crib. That's a crib. Don't say crate, you'll scare people. Sometimes we feel like, Lord, I don't deserve a place in heaven whatsoever. You could just toss me in the crate. You know? Remember the psalmist, I think, he talks about it's better to be a gatekeeper, right? Now, listen, I'll just stand at the gate. You know, you let me just stand in the gate, that's fine by me. I don't need even access in there. As long as I'm not going to the other place, I'll stand in the gate. God says, listen, I'm bringing this place to you, and you're going to be a part of it for all of eternity because he wants restored fellowship with us. John chapter 14, verse 2 through 4 says, in my house, I love this verse, in my Father's house, are many mansions, many rooms, many buildings. If it were not so, this is Jesus speaking, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. Isn't it incredible? Jesus came to provide a means for us to gain access to the Lord. And then he goes further and he says, listen, I want you to know, I came to die so that you might have access to me and the Father forever. But now once you have access to us, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to prepare a place. That's the New Jerusalem that we're reading about right here. This is what Jesus has been working on for the last couple thousand years. He says, I went to prepare a place for you, and now I'm going to present it to you and say, behold, this is your new home. He goes to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go, you know, and you know the way. God says, hey, listen, I went to prepare a place because I wanted you to be right next to me. I wanted you to be right where I'm at. I didn't want you outside the camp. I didn't want you in a dorm on the other side of town. I didn't want you at the gate. I wanted you right next to me. I loved you so much. I died to prepare a way for you. And I want to continue to show you how much I love you by preparing a place for you with me in all of eternity. Heaven. This is the glory of heaven, that we have fellowship with the Lord for all of eternity. All of eternity, guys. Some other points that I think we're going to look at come next week. I feel like maybe this is a good place. This is a good place to end. You see, we talk a lot about heaven, right? Especially in contrast to hell, you know? It's like, I accept Jesus Christ because I really want the fire insurance, and then, you know, afterwards, I'm not going to really pay too much attention to what goes on afterwards. It's just heaven, you know, it's better than the other place. But sometimes I feel like, at least again with myself, that maybe we just downplay heaven and the glory of heaven and what awaits us. You know, we have this thing called selective memory, right? Selective memory. I'll give you an example. I said to my wife as we were driving in the car the other day, I said, honey, do you remember, this is her sister, do you remember when Michelle had her baby, Vinny? This is her oldest son. I said, I remember it. And she goes, oh, you remember it? I said, yeah, I remember it. I said, I remember seeing Michelle and just how rough she looked after. It was a hard labor, okay? That was the only thing I remembered, okay? Evidently, a lot more went on in that day that I did not remember, but I didn't think anybody could remember it because it was like 9 years ago. My wife has this uncanny ability. I'm not kidding, all right? Details that I've never... She goes, I remember it. Everybody was mad at you. Everybody was mad at me? What did I do? I just remember Michelle having a rough delivery and she had some broken blood vessels in her eyes. Like, that's what I remember. She goes, oh no. She goes, you decided that while Michelle was going into labor, you had to go train jiu-jitsu. I said, I did? She goes, yeah, you did. And she goes, and then you stayed late after with the instructor. I did? Yes, you did. And then I came to pick you up. I said, and then we went. She goes, oh no. Then, because you had trained longer, you wanted to go back to the house now and take a shower. I said, I did. She goes, yes. And then, this is really different than what I remember here, honey. She goes, and then you were feeling shaky because you trained jiu-jitsu and now you needed some food, so we had to stop and get you food. Okay. And then everybody was mad, and we got there 5 minutes before visiting hours ended. Okay. And I had hardly any time with my brand new nephew. Okay. So that, I'll never bring this up again because it wasn't. He said, how were the other ones that I was part of? Those were fine. Okay, good. I know I can bring those up then. Heaven, we have a selective memory. And we remember these little details. Oh yeah, Jesus came. We're going to be celebrating Christmas soon. Jesus came in the form of a baby, died on the cross for our sins so that we can go to heaven in the end. And God's like, listen, what I love about this area of Scripture we're going to get into over the next couple weeks is God's laying the platter out. And He's going, nobody, no reasonably minded human being should pass up this platter. You'd have to be nuts. You'd have to be absolutely insane to trade in what God's offering at no cost to you for just some temporary pleasure, which will only result in permanent destruction. God's saying, why would you think? Look at the extent to which I love you. Look at how far I've gone for you. Why would you presume that I have anything but your best interest in mind? Guys, God has laid it out for us. And the best part about it is He says, listen, I want you there. There's not a single person on planet Earth that God doesn't want in heaven. The Bible says that He is willing that none should perish. Not a single person. I don't care whether we want them there or not. There's plenty of people maybe that we don't want there. But God says there's not a single person in all of history that He doesn't want there with Him because He loves us that much. Not us, but also you. You individually, that He wants to be with, that He wants to conversate with, that He wants to see for all of eternity. So cool. God's not going to get sick of me in heaven. Despite all my weird questions, probably. God's going, I want you there. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll lay down my life so that you could be there. Why would we ever pass up such an offer? Let's think on the goodness of God. Let's remember the greatness of heaven that awaits. Let's keep our focus and our minds fixed on Him as we head to that place. And listen, we're going to close now. But as we do, I want to encourage you guys in this last worship song. If you're here and you hear about this presentation, this platter that the Lord's kind of laid out for us, and you say to yourself, man, I want that. I don't know if I'm going to get that. I don't know if I deserve that. Well, here's the good news. Jesus Christ paid for that. He says, listen, everything that you're hearing about now, it's been paid for. You don't have to jump through any hoops. You don't have to do anything to earn it. You can't earn it. He did it for you. He says, here's what you got to do. Just put your faith in me. Trust me. And if you put your faith in Jesus Christ, that too will be yours. And so if that's you here this morning, then I would encourage you as we close out in a worship song, do this. There'll be some people up here that would love to pray with you and lead you in a very simple prayer and proclamation of faith. And God says that will be yours. You want to know that God personally? Maybe you've cried out to Him in some of the darkest times in your life. You can know Him here and now and today, and you can know Him for all of eternity. Don't leave here without making heaven your home.